As a Queenslander, I just want to get your thoughts on these two women who have brought coronavirus back to Queensland.
Mate, firstly, great to be with you, great to be with your viewers. But once again, I mean, yeah, these are the numpty noobars that cause all of us a lot of grief, to be frank. I mean, the rules are only as good as those Australians who are willing to follow them. Now, this is clearly a breach. We are now obviously contact tracing around those two individuals, those two young women who have very clearly done the wrong thing. Who I think will feel the community's backlash very strongly in coming days.
Yeah, you're seeing a lot of that now. A lot of people I've been speaking to in Queensland are certainly feeling that, Minister. I mean, now you've got football teams that are scrambling to get out there. You've got aged care facilities that are being locked down, quite rightly. Everyone concerned about what's happening in Victoria. I mean, is a $4,000 fine enough here?
Oh, well, $4,000 is what it's set at the moment. They are set by the states. But this is a good test for Queensland Health and its contact tracing systems. It's certainly a good test for all of us in Queensland and a very strong reminder that we all need to be out there doing the right thing. I mean, once again, I think this is a reflection of that protest some weeks ago now where 10,000 of their closest friends got together without penalty. We can't allow those sorts of things to happen because, quite simply, the public think that it's okay and the rules no longer apply.
Is it right to close the border to Greater Sydney? I mean, businesses are going to hurt again.
I mean, these are decisions of the Queensland Premier. It's entirely up to the Queensland Premier as to what happens with the border. But once again, and this is over a long period of time, we know that the Premier will do what's popular, not necessarily what's right. So I think these are challenging times, particularly for business, as you point out. I mean, I was at the Hervey Bay Chamber of Commerce yesterday morning, a first meeting for months, a lot of positivity, very excited to be back at work, and now we're taking a bit of a retrograde step.
So do you support her decision, though, even though it is the decision of the Premier? Is that something that you stand by?
Oh, look, they are entirely decisions of the state. It's not up to me as the Minister for Northern Australia to make that decision. I'm about driving jobs in our economy. And I've got to say the resources sector has been phenomenal through the last few months, the iron backbone of the economy.
Well, I mean, let's talk about that. The US and Australia, the Defence Cooperation Framework, which was signed yesterday, there's talk of establishing a US-funded military fuel reserve in Darwin. Matt Cunningham, our reporter, has been talking about that this morning as well. The rub here being that the port of Darwin, which is owned by a Chinese company, is right there too. I mean, do you have any concerns about that?
Well, firstly, this is good news, not only for Australia, but certainly for the Territory. And what happens generally with these types of things is once you get that cornerstone investor, you potentially get more side-by-side, co-located, that take up the advantage. So I think in the future we'll see more fuel storage up there. Look, I didn't agree. I didn't agree with the decision at the time. I certainly still don't agree with it. But once again, it was a decision of the Territory government. Now, we've made changes at a federal level around what we consider to be critical infrastructure pieces. They do require further review right across the board. And in fact, the Treasurer made more announcements only a couple of weeks ago in terms of what we're looking to do around securing Australia's national interests, and we'll continue to focus on that.
Have we got enough fuel?
Well, we hold around 28, 30 days. It does meet the International Energy Agency standard. But once again, this is good news. More strategic storage located in Australia. And I think there are great options in the Territory. If we look at the Beetaloo Basin, if we can get that underway in coming years, there's potential there for wet gas. That means more opportunities for Darwin in the north. That means more jobs, and that's what I'm all about.
It's really interesting. I mean, we just had Evan Lucas on our show a short time ago and talked about the fact that China's economy next year is going to grow at 8%. And that's going to be to great benefit to companies like Rio Tinto. That kind of proves, doesn't it, that despite all of the tensions that are existing at the moment between Australia and China, that they are still buying our product and buying up big.
Well, this is the fundamentals of trade. We have a product that the world wants. It's a quality product that we can deliver at a very competitive price. Logistics chains work well given our location, and people will continue to buy what is a quality outcome and an export from Australia. Long may it continue, I've got to say.
Later on today, the Prime Minister is going to be talking about the new Closing the Gap targets. There's a couple of figures that have been thrown about here, and I just want to get your thoughts on. So there's a pledge to reduce suicides, and they want to reduce Indigenous incarceration by 15%. That's for adults, 30% for juveniles by the year 2031. That's the hope, anyway, after years of failure. Do you think that's achievable?
Oh, well, these are announcements that were made by our Indigenous Affairs Minister in Ken Wyatt, who's done a power of work. In terms of my portfolio, what I'm focused on is getting people into employment. The best thing we can do for any Australian, regardless of whether they're from an Aboriginal community or not, is to get them a job that they can pay their own way. They can certainly live the lifestyle that they choose. And once again, the resources sector is one of those areas that employs thousands of Indigenous Australians. Look at Adani, it's a great example. So media reports put their employment at over 20% of local Indigenous in terms of those who are located here in Queensland right now. A project which people fought against, and we said consistently and constantly, this is about jobs for people in central Queensland. It's about resources for Australia, and that's been the outcome.
Yeah, and there's a lot of Indigenous communities and regions in Northern Australia, though. I mean, do you think that these targets here, these goals, are achievable?
Well, they are the ones which have been set. Once again, it's an announcement that we made by Ken later today. We obviously have to have targets and stretch goals that we can look to attain, but we need to ensure that we continue to work very closely with Indigenous communities. The resources sector does do a good job in those terms. They are the ones that are out there providing services and employment. They certainly work closely with communities right across Northern Australia. We can always do better, I've got to say, and I've said before, we can always do better. But once again, these are difficult issues that can only be addressed by us all working together.